Welcome to Rauta's retrospective videos. This time we're tackling Satanic Warmaster, one of the biggest, finest, and so forth in the Finnish black metal scene. Now, this got obviously started when I was doing my, history series about Finnish black metal from the 90s and onwards. And because of that, I was obviously listening to Satanic Warmaster's discography. However, because I also interviewed the man of the band a few years ago, it was a due time to see the story so far with more details than what this history series showed, because it always has three different bands and so forth. So now I had more time to delve into the world of Satanic Warmaster beyond albums. Some of them I obviously have heard over the years. Some of them really needed that kind of a revisiting, going back to those older releases and listening to them again. And some of them, quite few of them actually, were something that I had missed over the years because I've never been too much into splits and bizarre, obscure EPs and so forth. It really depends band to band, but the older I get, the kind of lazier I also get, and which means I put more focus on albums because that's really the trial by fire. I think Mick Osbo of Clandestine Blaze once upon a time said something like, "It's relatively easy to do 3-track demo and make it good, but when it's time to do an album, say include 10 tracks or so forth, it's a different ball game, because then you really have to figure out how to make a good album with way more ideas than 2 or 3 songs." That applies to me as well. And that's why I really prefer good albums, because my attention span requires more than, say, 10-15 minutes of stuff. If I want quality, if I want to enjoy music, I want a full album. But like I said, it's time to talk about these other releases as well. And along the way, I'll try to tackle some of the questions, some of the doubts of the band, and also talk about my personal experiences with the given band, because I've known Mr. Werewolf since late 90s. Actually almost mid 90s, but yeah, give or take. Back in the days, way before Satanic Warmaster, there was a band called Horna, which I'm sure you have heard of. That is one of the oldest Finnish black metal bands, started as early as like 1993 or so. And for a long time, many years, Horna was known as Nazgul on the vocals. Nazgul, then again, later on became Werewolf, the man of Satanic Warmaster. Two themes have always pretty much gone hand in hand throughout the history of Satanic Warmaster in terms of names, and that is these werewolf themes, and then again, Mr. Satanic Warmaster as, the leader of the band. However, Werewolf is the name he uses, so that's more the thing, and as such, even though people often talk about Satanic Warmaster more as a band and as a person, technically speaking, when we're talking about the given man, we're talking about Werewolf, not Satanic Warmaster. But because, like here on Metal Archive site, you can see there's only one member of the band, it's easy to make the mix and confuse the band name with the given artist. And also worth noting is that nowadays there is a full band, especially in terms of live and recording music and all that stuff. It goes beyond just one man. And also, more noteworthy, back in the days, there were actually 2 key members. Lord War Torek did guitars for a few years, and then of course Satanic Warmaster has always been there with Werewolf. There also mentions a third member here, but not maybe so important part of the band really. Live musicians, however, feature quite few underground musicians from the Finnish black metal scene, many of them actually quite experienced and veterans of the given style, scene, and so forth. So yeah, Satanic Warmaster might seem a solo thing, but obviously when you go live and dig a little bit deeper into history, it's beyond that. Much like all the bands back in the days, which started in the 90s, nobody really jumped right away to do the first album, but indeed, times were different. Years before Spotify's, YouTubes, and whatnot, Bandcamps, when you could just easily, deliver whatever music you had. So basically, in order to either catch a record deal or just, rehearse a little bit before going to full album lengths, a lot of bands did demos. And I think, honestly, that is still the right way to do it. Not just jump quickly into first album, which is the resulting gonna sound like a demo when you skip the demo phase. Do demo first and figure out then what's it going to be. Maybe you don't need demos after the initial ones, but first thing first, when you start a new band, a new career, if you will, I think demo phase is very important. And it's very true with Bloody Ritual from 2000 by Satanic Warmaster. I'm not gonna deny it's kind of a crappy. It doesn't go even anywhere near whatever Satanic Warmaster did later on, because it's very much like my first black metal kind of a thing. However, obviously, Satanic Warmaster wasn't Werewolf's first band back in the days. Like I said, he had already a lot of experience with Horna, but also other bands. Like if you take a look at this members list by his history and all, now some of these bands are obviously a lot newer, but they were already like older bands like Blasphemous Evil and Pest and things like that during his early years. So Werewolf had been always active in the scene, and he had side projects and so forth. So obviously, it was quite quickly when he climbed up the ladder in terms with a new band. Now I'm making this guess a little bit like late, but I guess back in the days nobody really could see that when a certain name from a already established black metal name like Horna, when the vocalist jumps the ship and gonna start a new band, gonna start a new career, if you will, that it's gonna grow that big. Why? Because, well, you already had history with, say, Norwegian bands and also Finnish bands, and usually when one goes into side adventures, it becomes something smaller. That's how it usually is. It's like the opposite with the supergroups. When known people come together and find a new band, then it's going to be something bigger, like it has been in the past in many, many countries. But soon after Bloody Ritual, their debut album Strength and Honor 2001 came out, and it was coming with force. This album is reeking more maybe to Polish black metal, meaning there's a, in a way, strong Graveland vibe to it, and I think it's great. It's still one of the best Satanic Warmaster albums ever. It's kind of a raw, unpolished, violent, and while it's not very good sounding, it's part of the charm that it isn't. There is something very, very barbaric with the given album. It's definitely one of those raw end of black metal ones from Finland, and doesn't really represent the so-called Finnish black metal sound, which later on became part of the, pact that people started kind of copying outside Finland too, but also in Finland. Like there are lots of German bands which are often said like, this sounds like Satanic Warmaster and the like. And that thing really, really happened a lot later on. Strength and Honor was a different animal in my opinion, and I think that's what started really the best and first Satanic Warmaster phase, if you will. That was soon followed by Black Catharsis EP 2002. Now, when I mentioned I'm not big on EPs, I actually have this one on my shelf, much like the debut album. And this already kind of, brought the Satanic Warmaster symbol in the game, like on top of logo, which has changed, by the way, over the years with Satanic Warmaster. This became like a thing for a while at least. I even have a shirt with that, symbol and all. Whereas with Satanic Warmaster's original album, Strength and Honor was kind of a primitive take with the Ouroboros, and then you had Crown with 666 and a winged beast of sorts, and Strength and Honor, which also put them a little bit in trouble in a way because people were making simple accusations and conclusions. Let's get back to that later on. After that, it started the so-called split era with Satanic Warmaster, which first happened with Krieg, and then there were lots of other bands later on. Like with the True Face of Evil, you had the True Frost from Germany, and these rather grim takes were like good successors to Strength and Honor. Now, it didn't take much time, as you can see. 2001, 2003, you had album Opferblut, which is also one of the best black metal albums ever from Finland, and one of the best Satanic Warmaster with a given style. And here it is, the werewolf symbol or drawing very much in the game. So it was already kind of like emphasizing the thing. It was no more Nazgul or from Armageddon, whatever it was back in the days with Horna. So all that, Lord of the Rings, Tolkien stuff was in the past. Now it was werewolf indeed. And again, a couple of splits followed with smaller underground names like Akitsa from Canada or Gestapo 666. And these were like putting the band on the map in a very, very different fashion than a lot of other bands, collaborating. So whatever is something that you can describe Satanic Warmaster is that always been collaborating. He might seem like obnoxious and arrogant guy in so many ways, but always been doing, collaboration, cooperating with a lot of people in the scene. And I think it kind of shows also that he's quite a social person. I mean, I like the guy, but he can be trouble to some, especially if the mutual trust, respect, what have you, is not being established. Technically speaking, you could say Werewolf is a man of many faces. He can be the family man, something that none of us basically know. He can be this front of a black metal band or more, and he can be the friendly guy, friend of, just guy who plays video games and enjoys, relaxed time like any other of us, and so forth. But we are not going to see most of these sides. I think most of the people are going to side just the arrogant black metal star, if you will. And that is often overshadowing the rest of this. But I think the amount of splits kind of prove that this is the social collaborating side, which is like the antithesis of this so-called arrogance. So take it as you will, but in my opinion, actions speak louder than words. So about the splits, there were already quite a few, and then there was another EP. This time another animal took present, Wolverine. Now, as an old X-Men fan, I cannot stop thinking of Wolverine of X-Men. That's my reason, and also Entombed Wolverine Blues, which I got also a little bit hots for this particular fierce, small animal, Wolverine. A little bit different cover for Satanic Warmaster if you think about it, kind of a, sidetracking from the typical themes drawn and all that stuff. But yeah, good EP nonetheless. Then came probably the best, or one of the best albums, 2005, Carillion, Satanist Madness. Here are two things that are pretty much like nailing Satanic Warmaster. First of all, he's from Karelia, the southern west part of Finland, closer to Russian border, that is Karelia. Some part are in the Russian side and all, so there was more like geographic pointer, much like some Nordic bands, from Norway, for instance. We're pointing out that we are from Norway. Some Swedish bands were probably going a little bit, not necessarily nationalistic, but kind of like pointing out we're from Sweden and so forth. So kind of a natural continuation on that path. And obviously Satanist here kind of emphasized like, yes, Satanic Warmaster is Satanic band. It's about, kind of embracing Satan as a being and as a maybe faith even, religion of sorts, or at least spiritual thing. So these were like putting it back on the map. So it's not about political thing, which we might have strength and honor related to, say, ancient Rome or German 1940s. And with titles like Opferblut, you could also think about, okay, now it's flirting with the German things. Suddenly it's more like, no, we're coming from Finland, we're Satanist, fuck off. Now, this is also, in my opinion, the golden era of Satanic Warmaster, because in my opinion, these three albums, Strength and Honor, Opferblut, and Carillion, Satanist Madness, are also the years when, more or less, Lord War Torek, the guitarist, was in the band, 2000 to 2005. So very, very active years. I mean, if you think about it, you had like albums coming out in a year span of 4 years, and also a lot of EPs and splits. Very active phase, and in my opinion, the golden era of Satanic Warmaster. All these three albums are, in my opinion, the best of Satanic Warmaster so far. Which is a little bit negative if you consider that, Carillion Satanist Madness is like 19 years ago. It's quite a bit, really. Now, afterwards, the split thing kept going on. Now with Black Metal Commando was a compilation, and then you had Studhof split, then you had this four-way split, with some other bands, lesser known bands, and pardon for Metal Archives being slow sometimes, this just happens nowadays, two of them. That was followed by live albums, which I skipped for this video. I decided compilations and live albums are not really necessary when it comes to going through the retrospective, because lots of recycling, having the same songs all over again. And another EP which I never heard back in the days was a Revelation from 2007. And already by this point, the style had changed. And note, there's a big gap in terms of albums from 2005 to 2010 with Nachserer and the earlier albums. See, the earlier albums came every 2 years, and now suddenly there's 5 years. But lots of splits, lots of smaller stuff happening. Now, in my opinion, after this Lord War Torek, leaving the band or being kicked out of the band, I don't know still to this day which one is true. It probably depends who you ask, but let's go with the official story, and I think he was kicked from the band. Style started to change. And in my opinion, it resulted as the weakest Satanic Warmaster album so far, Nachserer. Suddenly, the kind of a raw, fierce, barbaric black metal was not exactly gone, but it was shifting a little bit different. Nachserer is the kind of transition phase album. It kind of a raw, in a way, it's the rawest. The production is quite messy, to be honest. But also, in my opinion, the songwriting is a little bit like, it's almost like you're picking up leftovers. Suddenly the Satanic Warmaster magic is like gone. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad album. It's not even a lukewarm album. But it's not great as the previous ones. Like I said, I really fucking love the first 3 albums. Here it is, the album which is just like decent, quite okay. If the first album is a 9 out of 10 for me, much like Karelian Satan's Madness, Nachserer is something like 7. It doesn't really have the same magic. I recently realized I still have it on CD, but probably getting rid of it. It's just not really doing the trick for me. I guess this could be the start of the pessimist era entering the game. However, the hope was rather quickly restored 4 years later with Fimbulwinter, which in my opinion started the so-called second era, if you called Nachserer a transition phase album, which really didn't start anything, more of an ending rather than a new start if you ask me. So Fimbulwinter was suddenly bringing the more honed, more polished version of Satanic Warmaster into the game, meaning it's sounding better and suddenly the songs are more captivating. Also, assuming Metal Archive side once again works, suddenly a new kind of art was entering the game. I really like this rather thrall-like phase of the style, but it's so different in a way than the earlier stuff. Now, Nachserer was already a little bit different also, but once again the werewolf theme was there, and I think along these years also somewhere the logos changed. I do not really remember the exact year, but it started changing. So there were some kind of a shedding skin era, like snakes or spiders shed their skin, just leave the old thing behind and become something like a newer version. But then something different, something weird, unexpected happens. See the difference between Fimbulwinter and the 6th album, Amon-Gandr. 8 years. This was something that probably a lot of people were not expecting. I mean, you could see that after the early years, the pace was kind of slowing down, even if there were, EPs and demos and all that stuff. But yeah, in terms of Satanic Warmaster, there was kind of a momentum shift in a way. You had these weird releases like Project Tireheb, which is done with another friend of mine, Moosehead. They did their own version of Buried songs with, I'm going to show it if Metal Archives works. This has like a, Buried cover songs, and it's not really black metal release as you might expect. Very, very small batch of limited edition through Goatworks. Something that very acquired taste here. Whereas all these other, splits and EPs are still something that's kind of easy to get into. One of the best splits, by the way, gotta mention is Lux Satanae, 13 Hymns of Finnish Devil Worship, because it's Satanic Warmaster and Archgoat doing a split. This is, I think, in a way, often overlooked gem, and not so easy to get after all, because, being a vinyl split. but definitely one of the better ones from Satanic Warmaster in terms of split. All these splits are interesting to listen to with, bands like Mutilation and, Behexen and all, but in my opinion, most of my focus would go to the album still. And talking of Behexen and Satanic Warmaster split, by the way, I would say the Behexen side is better. And it's one of the very few ones where I would say that Satanic Warmaster is being topped by another band. Because most of these, splits with, Stuthoff or Akitsa, whatever, I prefer Satanic Warmaster side. Because it's really touching the right buttons and doing the right tricks for me, But with Behexen, Satanic Warmaster split, yeah, Behexen is actually, in my opinion, the better one. So a lot of things were changing here with Fimbulwinter and Amon-Gundr era. And when Amon-Gundr finally came out 2022, it became like, what is this? Softest Satanic Warmaster so far. It even has, folk metal influences in a way. Like a little bit those melodies here and there. It was such a weird release in a way. And yet at the same time, it was also a continuation to Fimbulwinter. Good album in my opinion, but none of these albums later on, since Natchez don't really have, in my opinion, there's no contest for the 3 first album, which are really, in my opinion, the golden era. But what is also worth mentioning, that after, or starting with Natchez, these newer era of Satanic Warmaster albums, being more melodic, more polished, not so raw and barbaric, were, in my opinion, the starting point, what is nowadays known as the modern Finnish black metal sound, which is then again either being copied by or at least inspiring a lot of bands outside Finland, especially Germany and other stuff, labeling this the Finnish black metal. So kind of a raw, kind of a grim black metal, but still melodic. Different kind of melodic than, say, from Sweden, thinking of, bands like Dark Funeral or Dawn or Mörgryning, etc. But, this certain kind of a melancholic and grim black metal, while being melodic, is something that Satanic Warmaster was, laying one of the cornerstones. Obviously, you could say, yes, Horna and Sargeist, in a way, were definitely doing their part with that, but Satanic Warmaster, I think, is still the milestone band you keep comparing them to. Now, talking of Amon-Gundr, it's also, in a way, it's like a starting point for a new era. Colorful cover. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of art. It could be from a fantasy book, like role-playing game or whatever. But I like this. This cover is beautiful. It's fierce, violent, colorful. And the colors kind of do more justice to this kind of art than being black and white. Also, what is worth noting, with Fimbulwinter and even more so with Amon-Gundr, the playing of the drums is so much better. So it's almost like a different band at this era. The band has really kind of a step to a new era, not only in terms of, songwriting being softer, more melodic, catchy, if you will, mainstreamish in a way, but also in terms of the production is now solid big band style, which wasn't the case for many, many, many years until Natchez and so forth. And also, the technicality with the drums is almost like you can hear the difference between early Satanic Warmaster, which is quite okay, it's passable. There are no technicalities, it's not very fast-paced, but with Amon-Gundr, it's like, hello, new drummer, we welcome you with, happiness. It's a different ball game, it sounds so much better. Lineup information just shows vocals, guitar, songwriting, lyrics for Werewolf, which you can pretty much figure out being solo band. Note, no drumming, which is then again, among other things mentioned, here. And these are really the difference that makes Amon-Gundr sound so much different than any earlier Satanic Warmaster thing. So I wouldn't really be surprised if this was so-called start of a third age. But too early to say whether Fimbulwinter and Amon-Gundr, formed their own era, like in hindsight later on, or was Fimbulwinter and Natchez so much like a transition phase kind of a thing before Amon-Gundr started something new. All in all, quite an interesting discography, always focusing more on demos, splits, and all that stuff rather than doing albums every 2 or 3 years, which seems to be the case with bands like, say, Marduk, Cannibal Corpse, and all that stuff. Or Horna for that matter. So they're always active bands in black metal as well, doing albums after another. Now that we've covered, most of the covers and lineup changes, style changes, and all that stuff, before getting to recapping the whole thing and figuring it out, I think it's worth talking about the themes and lyrics. Now, I read the lyrics. I could easily find, not for the EPs and splits and all that stuff. It's just too time consuming, not that interesting. But to give it the overall idea, kind of reminding what it was once again all about. Themes and lyrics of Satanic Warmaster have been debated and giving the National Socialism thing early on, and which is why sometimes the band is being lumped up with NSBM bands. Now, I want to make it clear. If you read the lyrics, you can probably find about two mentions towards something that could be seen as National Socialism. So it's a little more like flirting with dangerous topics and all. But if you really read the lyrics with thought and, thinking, once again, what they are all about, there's very, very little of that. So labeling a band called like NSBM just because there are few ideas, I would say it's quite a stretch. It's almost like you could say in a general fashion that everybody in the world is racist if you push them enough. So let that sink in for a bit. I'm not defending the band here. That I have no reason, no intention to do that. I'm just pointing out that a couple of songs don't really define the whole band. So call it even National Socialism early is a little bit of a stretch. But later on, later on you really don't find those topics. More like typical stories of, excuse me, flu is still going to fade away. Satanism, darkness, war, vampirism, lycanthropy, these are all very, very true. Sometimes the lyrics of Satanic Warmaster are quite typical in a way, kind of a poetic, kind of a maybe filled with metaphors. It's not even that outright anti-religious as you might think of, being Satanic Warmaster, waging war on Christ and Christianity and so forth. You really don't see that much hostility even in the lyrics. Surely some are reminding this is black metal from Finland, against Christianity and all. But they are actually very fewer than I was expecting or remembering them to be. Maybe it was because of my past with the Horna and all. And overall, in my opinion, still showing why it's one of the best black metal bands from Finland. For me, 3 first albums from some other little bit later releases. Definitely not for everybody, especially when we're talking about the early era. They're way too primitive, and maybe you have too much of that Graveland vibe to it in terms of music, being raw, simplistic and all. And later on, maybe some French black metal started seeping in when it kind of had more melodic and raw at the same time. I mean, think about the French 90s black Légions Noir scene, like bands like Mutilation. You had raw and melodic at the same time, which is not the typical combo when we're talking about really primitive bands like, not Akitsa really, but, things like Iljarn or Hot or whatever. So, Satanic Warmaster has always been inspired by a lot of bands. He has never denied it that the French black metal or Polish black metal or Brazilian black metal, for that matter, have been, kind of seeping through the music. And I think it's one of the beautiful things is with people like him, like doing splits and all that stuff, collaborating and giving credit, giving tribute to people and bands being inspired, is that he's vocal about it. He has never been hiding and making like, I invented this kind of black metal. No, he has been really giving the credit like, okay, I like these bands and this, that, and that stuff. And he has always been listening music way beyond than just black metal, which is, I think, is one of the enriching things in Satanic Warmaster materials. A lot of bands who are like, I grew up with black metal and only bands I listen to are black metal, and when I do my own black metal, it's gonna sound like a copycat stuff. Satanic Warmaster's case is showing that he has vast knowledge of different kind of bands and different kind of styles, and that is one of the reasons why the music is so versatile and diverse, able to kind of shapeshift like a true werewolf from man to beast or to just wolf form. And there's a reason why Satanic Warmaster is indeed one of the most liked, one of the most talked about black metal bands from Finland. And I guess that's also the reason why Satanic Warmaster interview on Rauta is the most viewed video of all times on Rauta. I think it will be hard to top that because there's quite a big gap between the first place, Satanic Warmaster interview, and anything after that. Interesting band, sure. Lots of opinions, lots of strong opinions, lots of that arrogance, lack of that rockstar mentality, but also always been a good band live and on albums. With the Not being an exception in my books. But there it is. I'm sure you people have a lot of questions, a lot of details to be tackled and all. If I can help you with that, let me know and I will try to answer. Probably forgot a lot of details to mention which I had over the years, like when I was on stage with Werewolf back in the days when he played with Horna and we did Slayer's Black Magic. And I forgot some of the lyrics and he asked me after the show, I bet you forgot some of the lyrics. And I was like, man, yeah, I could call it. But that's an anecdote for this stuff and time to end this lengthy video. If you're still unsure about Satanic Warmaster, whether it's safe or not to listen to, if you really have to ask that question yourself, no, it's not safe to listen to any black metal at all. Go something else. But if you are trying to find a reason why Satanic Warmaster is so popular in the underground, why it's so liked band, well, now you probably know a lot of reasons. And these high scores with given albums, even here on Metal Archive's site, not to mention Radio Music and individual reviews which you might find online, really should tell you the story. Satanic Warmaster is indeed one of the best black metal bands from Finland, and it is with a reason. Now off you go. Give their discography a chance. You might start with the albums, which are easily to be found on streaming services, but I always say go for the physical product if you get the chance. I do have some of them and I'm happy to have them, but for when it comes to this, lots of splits and EPs and or collector's items, nope, even I don't have them, and maybe not for so much reason to have for most of you out there, but the album still stands strong, and I think that is more than enough to say why Satanic Warmaster is indeed one of the better bands from Finland all times. Now, give you a go and stay metal.